Ever feel like blockchain tech is like stuck in first gear, raring to go, but kind of slow?
Yeah. It's the whole potential versus reality thing, right?
Exactly. But that's where Vite comes in. They're building a platform that's all about speed and efficiency, and we're diving into their white paper today to figure out how they're doing it.
And they don't just talk the talk. Vite gets into the nitty-gritty, the real technical challenges holding blockchain back.
Love that. So they're not afraid to get their hands dirty. And they started by rethinking the ledger itself. Instead of the usual blockchain, Vite uses something called a DAG.
Right, a DAG. It stands for Directed Acyclic Graph. Think of it like this. Instead of transactions lining up one after the other in a chain, they're branching out and connecting like a web.
Okay, I'm kind of visualizing it.
It lets transactions happen way faster because they're not stuck waiting in line for the one in front to finish. Projects like IOTA and Nano have used DAGs, but Vite adds an extra layer of, well, cleverness.
Okay, so we've got this web of transactions zipping around. Sounds efficient and all, but what about security? Isn't that a bit of a concern?
Ah, you're right on the money. Security is huge EE, especially with a system like this. You got to prevent double spending, which is where Vite's Snapshot Chain swoops in.
Snapshot chain sounds almost comforting, like a safety net.
That's a great way to put it. It's like a series of checkpoints for the entire network. Every so often, Vite takes a snapshot of all the account balances and transactions, everything, like a time-stamped record.
So nothing can slip through the cracks.
Exactly. These snapshots then link together, creating a super secure chain.
Mm.
So if someone wanted to mess with the system, they wouldn't just have to change the DAG, but this whole chain of snapshots too.
Whoa! Talk about an impossible task, like trying to rewrite history or something.
Right, and get this, the snapshot chain does double duty. It's also the global clock for the whole Vite network.
No way! So it's providing both security and a way to keep everything in sync.
You got it. Genius, right? Provides a consistent way to timestamp transactions, manage resources across the platform, everything.
Okay, I'm seriously impressed. But they didn't stop there, did they? What about how Vite actually reaches consensus? I heard they're doing things a little differently there, too.
Oh yeah, they definitely went their own way there. See, they weren't happy with the traditional proof of work, POW, being so slow and energy hungry. But even proof of stake, or POS, has its limits when things get busy.
Yeah, it's always a trade-off, isn't it?
So they came up with hierarchical delegated proof of stake. HDPoS for short. It's kind of two-layered, which is cool.
Two layers, so like different levels of consensus going on.
Exactly. You got the snapshot chain at the top, and that uses its own super speedy DPoS to confirm those snapshots we talked about. Make sure the checkpoints themselves are processed quickly. But then, down at the individual account level, things get really interesting.
Ooh, okay, I'm intrigued. What happens at the account level?
Way more flexibility. Imagine it like this. Different lanes on a highway, right?
Yeah.
Some are for faster travel, and some are for taking in the scenery.
Yeah.
Users get to choose.
Okay, so if I'm all about speed, I can pick a faster lane.
Exactly. You could choose a delegated group with tons of nodes processing transactions. Faster confirmations, higher throughput, you get the idea.
And if privacy is my top priority?
Then you'd want a consensus group that's more like a private meeting room. Smaller, more controlled, keeping your transactions within a tight circle.
Okay, that's really cool. So much control for the user, it's amazing. But with all this focus on speed and efficiency, what about smart contracts? Did they reinvent the wheel there too?
Let's just say Vite likes to push the boundaries. They figured, hey, why not apply this whole asynchronous thing to smart contracts too?
Whoa, really? So we're not just talking faster transactions, we're talking a whole new way for smart contracts to interact.
You got it. They developed this thing called Solidity. It's like they took Ethereum's Solidity language and gave it a turbocharge for the asynchronous world.
Okay, so instead of contracts making function calls and waiting around for a response,
They're zipping messages back and forth. Think of it like upgrading from walkie-talkies to smartphones. Everyone can communicate instantly. No more waiting your turn to talk.
Okay, that's a game changer for sure. And for users like me, what does this actually mean?
Imagine dApps that are way more responsive, way more capable of handling complex stuff.
Music to my ears. Okay, but let's get real for a second. Economics. Even the coolest tech.
They went with a resource allocation system based on quotas.
Quotas. So instead of paying for every single transaction, it's more like having a monthly allowance for the network.
You got it. And there are a few ways to get these quotas. You can earn them by helping secure the network through proof of work, or You can stake your Vite tokens.
Staking, right. So like locking up your tokens as collateral to show you're invested in the network.
Exactly. Shows you're serious and earns you quotas over time. Oh, and there's a third way too, which is kind of wild. You can actually destroy some of your Vite tokens.
Destroy them. Like they're gone forever. I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah. It's called burning tokens, and it gives you a one-time quota boost.
No, not really a fee, but a way to like prove you're not spamming the network with pointless transactions.
Exactly. It's a cool security measure. But hey, speaking of security, with all these transactions flying around, doesn't that create a ton of data? How does Vite deal with that?
Yeah, good point. Doesn't that slow things down eventually?
They've got that covered with something called block pruning. It's actually pretty smart.
Block pruning. So like trimming down the blockchain, are we talking gardening metaphors now?
Kind of. Remember those snapshots we talked about?
Mhm.
They act like checkpoints for the network's history. So because of these regular snapshots, Vite can safely remove or prune old transactions that aren't needed anymore.
Interesting. So it's like clearing out old files on your computer, making things run smoother.
Exactly. Nodes can still verify new transactions, and if you need the full history, there are dedicated full nodes that keep everything.
Okay, so they've really thought of everything. But with all this cool tech, how does Vite make sure things stay decentralized?
Ah, the million-dollar question. They actually use a hybrid approach, blending on-chain and off-chain governance.
A hybrid approach? That's pretty unique, isn't it?
Definitely. So they use Vite token for on-chain voting on big decisions, which makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But they also wanted to make sure everyone has a voice, even if they don't own a ton of tokens.
I like where this is going.
They have this system for submitting improvement proposals called VEPs, Vite Enhancement Proposals. It's a way to gather feedback, brainstorm, all that good stuff.
That's awesome. It sounds like they're really trying to build something special. But even with all this innovation, I gotta imagine there are still some bumps in the road, right? Things are still working on.
Of course, no system is perfect. One of the big things they're still working on is transaction verification on that snapshot chain. Even with all the parallel processing they're doing, there are still some bottlenecks.
So always room for improvement, even at Vite's level.
Absolutely. They're also looking at the virtual machine, the heart of any smart contract platform. They've made it compatible with Ethereum's EVM for now, but they're thinking long term.
Wait, are we talking building their own virtual machine from the ground up?
It's on their radar. It's a big undertaking, but imagine the possibilities. A brand new VM with its own instruction set, maybe even a new smart contract language.
Now that would be revolutionary. But it sounds like they're not just focused on the tech itself, right?
Yeah.
They're thinking about the whole ecosystem. It's like they're not just building a racetrack, they're creating a whole motorsport ecosystem around it.
Yeah. Exactly. Vite gets it. They know a platform's only as good as the community that uses it.
Makes sense.
So they're going all in on developer tools and resources, SDKs, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe even a dedicated app engine down the line.
Wow, now that's forward thinking. They're really setting the stage for mass adoption.
That's the idea.
Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into Vite, what are your big takeaways? What makes this project stand out from the crowd?
For me, it's their willingness to rethink everything.
Everything.
Yeah. They didn't just try to tweak existing blockchain designs. They went back to the basics and said, what if we started from scratch?
And came up with this whole new system.
Exactly. From that DAG structure to the snapshot chain, the HDPoS, the Solidity programming language, every single piece is designed to overcome the limitations of older blockchains.
It's like they cherry-picked the best ideas, then added their own spice to it.
Exactly.
And for our listeners out there who are thinking, why should I care? What would you say? What's the big takeaway for them?
Well, if Vite pulls this off, imagine using dApps that are just as smooth and easy as the apps we use every day.
It'd be huge. Blockchain wouldn't be this niche thing anymore. It'd be everywhere.
That's the dream.
It's a powerful vision. I'll grant you that.
Yeah.
But we got to be real. Are there any hurdles they still have to overcome?
Of course. Scalability is always a challenge, right? As the network grows, they got to keep innovating.
Right, because more users means more transactions, more everything.
Exactly. And security is always a moving target.
Gotta say, one step ahead of the bad guys.
Yep. And of course, none of this matters without a strong community.
The heart and soul of any good project.
You've said it better myself.
So they've got the tech now. They need the people to support it.
It's a long road ahead, but they're off to a good start.
It's an exciting time to be following this space, that's for sure. Well, that's it for our deep dive into Vite. For anyone who wants to go even deeper, we'll have a link to their white paper in the show notes. But before we sign off, any final thoughts for our listeners?
How about this? What if Vite is closer than we think? What if this is the breakthrough that finally brings blockchain to the masses?
It's a question worth pondering, for sure. And on that note, that's it for today's deep dive. Don't forget to check out the show notes for all the resources we mentioned and join the conversation on social media. Until next time, keep exploring and stay curious.